a little after 2 o'clock. We have a quorum present, so we're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the City of San Angelo's Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Board to order. The first thing we do is if there is anyone, I don't really see, oh yeah, there she is. There's some public here. We have public comment. If anyone wants to make a comment on something that is not on the agenda for the meeting, now is the time to do that. If you have something if you have an item, you're going to want to speak on an item that's on that agenda, we call for public comment on each item. So if you'll wait for that item to be called, but if anyone else has any other public comment, now's the time to approach.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
For those who don't know me, Evelyn Smith from Gethsemane Missionary Baptist Church.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm here today to do a follow-up on the cap that was to follow the nonprofit organization and just to get a status on that.
We haven't taken any other, well, I can't really comment on it. I guess I can give information on it. We haven't taken any other action on it. I think that may be one of the topics that might be mentioned in the discussion today. But there's not any plans for any action. We don't have any specific proposal or anything to vote for on that this time.
Okay, and you said it may be mentioned today. I didn't see it on here, so that's why I was up
Well,
here.
it kind of goes along with other project updates and director's reports and possible action for future items.
Okay.
But we're not taking any action on anything today. It's still a matter of discussion, but there's nothing on the agenda today to take action on that.
Okay, is there something that's going to come up?
I don't know. I just remember that it's been talked about vaguely among city staff and with myself, so.
Yes, I did see your last meeting in regards to that, which I thought went very well. So I just want to keep up on any information that's going on.
Thank you. All right. Any other public comment? Seeing none or hearing none. Consideration of approval of the minutes from the June 4th TIRZ Board meeting. You should have received a copy of the minutes with the email that Ms. Murrell sent. Is that right? Close? No, it's not right. Murrell. There we go, Ms. Murrell. Sent out. And are there any changes or corrections to any of the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion made to approve the minutes as written?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Motion is made by Ms. Spears. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Rodriguez. Any discussion? All right. If not, then all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. I will sign the minutes. Next item on the agenda is the financial report. Mr. Benoit.
Well, good afternoon, Chairman Hogue, board members, Aaron Benoit, Director of Planning and Development Services. So as you can see on your screen, and those of you that are following along with us, we have the South TIRZ allocation. You can see through there the beginning balance. There was a question at our last meeting about the interest income, and so I've got a little update on that. That number there of the $3,878 is what is budgeted for the annual amount of tax the interest income that comes in. Obviously, with interest rates where they are, that number is actually surpassing that. We will realize that at the end of this fiscal year and will be put into the pot for this next year for allocation. That is actually just a budgeted number. It is not an actual number. And so they do that every 30 days. It is rolling over. Is what I understand from our Director of Finance that helped me walk through some of those items on there. If you look for the available for assignment, as many of y'all know, we did have a round of allocations at the beginning of this month. Those are going to City Council, and if those do get approved at City Council, that will leave us a balance of $246,553 on the South TIRZ fund balance for the remainder of this fiscal year. which ends the end of September. Any questions on the south?
Could you repeat the number? I guess I may be looking at an old copy. What's available for assignment again on the south?
Yes, ma'am. If city council approves what y'all recommended last time, it would be $246,553.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And, go ahead, go Stephen.
I assume finance is combining funds and putting them in jumbo CDs and rolling them over 30, 60, 90 days. Is that right?
Yes, sir. They told me that ours rolls over every 30 days. Yes, sir.
Why is it so difficult to prorate the interest that is earned each month?
I'm not 100% sure, but as I understand it, that each time they do that, they have to go back and do a budget amendment that has to go through council, and so it's a multiple step process.
That $3,000, 3878, is that what is projected for the whole year?
Yes, sir.
If you've got, you ought to be making at least $1,000 a month on $200,000, and maybe more. You've got almost $600,000 invested right now.
Stephen, I would suggest that if you want more detail on that, because this keeps coming up, you have a sit down with Tina. We can schedule that, and y'all can ask all your questions directly, because neither he or I are the finance people.
I know you're
So
not.
I would rather you sit down directly with her and have those discussions. So let us know and we'll schedule it for you.
But you're violating your own accounting rules. Your accounting rules are first in, first out.
That's for you and Tina to hash out, but we would be happy to schedule that.
Okay.
Are there any other questions related to the finance report?
I do
For the
have the
south
north to
Yeah.
report on as well. If I can make sure I get it to, there we go. So again, the north, again, you see that we did have a large beginning balance. Again, there's the budgeted interest income. You see the available for the assignment was 2.3 after the beginning of this month. If those projects do get city council approval, that will leave us with available for assignment $2,112,859 in the north.
Okay. I do have a question related to Stephen's questions.
Yes.
And if that is a budgeted amount on the interest, when do we as a board ever get an accounting on what the interest is actually, I guess, in the bank for us to use, added to those numbers? I mean, I see that the budgeted interest income is there, but, you know, eventually there's going to be an actual interest number. And what happens, I guess I'm just talking about what happens to that money, that magic money somewhere. I mean, where does it go? Does it just stay in the general budget? Is it dedicated into the funds for the tiers? How does that work?
It is dedicated into the TIRZ fund, again, at the beginning. So this year's interest would be dedicated at next year's fiscal. So if we had higher than that amount, they would dedicate whatever that extra is. Just like on the property tax, those are what we project. And then if there's something that comes back from the appraisal district that they modify that or amend that, then sometimes that number will change.
I understand that. Well, I guess what I'm saying is, I think there should be, on a finance report, at least once a year, or every 6 months, or however much it's done, where we can get an actual report on actually how much interest income was added to the TIRZ funds that can be used. I mean, it's just informational. I mean, I understand we're all these numbers are working with projections right now, but it would seem like I would feel more comfortable with, just since we're dealing with interest in public dollars, that we know how much was actually earned by the funds that we're supposed to be managing, and where that money goes, so that it's,
Okay.
in other words, it can be accountable, that it's not getting spent in some other account or used in
Right.
some other way, that it's being accounted for tiers. And I would just like to be able to see that somehow on a financial report at least once a year.
Okay, I can certainly make that request.
Maybe that's whenever the fiscal year is up or something, we need it.
Mr. Chairman,
Having
I think
accounting.
instead of me having an individual private meeting, it'd be helpful to the board. You'd have Tina come down and talk to all of us next board meeting.
I don't know if that's necessary. She's been to talk to us a couple of times before on this. I know you have specific questions related to the investments that are detailed that, I don't know, but, you know, it's up to the board what they would want to do if they want to ask her to come.
Whatever.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
so I guess I'm seeing you nod your head. So I'm assuming that you're, by October, November's statement, then we will have something because we'll be under the new budget so that we can see the amount. Is that what you're agreeing to in the
Yes,
nod?
ma'am. I will see what we can do about getting a report of what the interest was that was added to this fiscal year, and then maybe where we're at during this fiscal year that potentially could be added this next budget year.
Okay. And then my second point, Mr. Chairman, is I understand that Tina may have made some presentations before, but I think
You would like to
I would
have
have
one?
to agree with Steve that some of us maybe weren't on the board at that time.
Okay.
And I think it's a good thing to make sure that we all are clear.
okay.
Because there have been discussions, you know,
Yep.
just handful here and there, but I think that would help the overall board be clear.
Well, and I think, and I'm fine with that. And I think that's appropriate. We can put that on for the next meeting or the next agenda, just to have an informational discussion about it. I know that Mr. Brown has specific questions because of his experience and knowledge working for the city that a lot of us don't. And I know he may have specific questions that he may want to talk to Tina individually anyway. But
And yes, I'll make the request to see if she's available that date. If not, she may send her assistant director.
Well, I think it would be better if we have her, so I
Okay.
think I would rather postpone that until we can have her come.
Okay. We'll be happy
And
to
that
look
way
at
we
that
can
over-
everyone can understand how the system works and the process.
Absolutely.
Okay. And we'll make sure that the agenda reflects that, and so that when you see the agenda, you'll know if that individual is
Yep.
able to make it or not.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Did we get the actual questions to her prior? Because I think last time she
that
was
would-
here,
Yep.
it was,
We don't want to blindside her with
Correct.
what the questions are. So if each of you have any specific questions you want answered, before she comes, I would suggest we send those to Erin.
Yeah,
And,
be happy to
and send those
accumulate
on
those
so we
and
can
get
have
those to her.
specific
Yes.
items. So we don't want to sandbag her, we want it to be a productive discussion.
Yes.
So, okay. Any other questions about the financial report? All right, well, moving on. The next item on the agenda is item number 4, board education discussion, and this was an idea that I had a while back, and we've been slow getting to it, but
Yeah, so for some of you, this may be relatively old information, but I think it's just also good just for the group here, as well as the folks that are tuning in, that are listening to see what is our TIRZ Board all about. So TIRZ stands for Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone. There in the state of Texas, there is legislation that creates these zones, and then local jurisdictions can enact ordinances to designate where in their community these zones end up being. It is a financing tool that local governments use to help with structural improvements, enhance infrastructure, and different projects within a defined area. Obviously, our community did that, and I'll kind of give you some dates in just a few minutes. Basically, the reason why these things are there is to promote both the viability of existing businesses and to attract new commercial enterprises to such an area. And that is really what our TIRZ program has been doing in the south and in the north. While it does do some public improvement projects with infrastructure, walkability, you've seen the South Chadburn project that has really done a lot of stuff for that streetscape. It still is going back to how is that helping those businesses existing and new ones coming in. And so our program, let me see if I can get this, if I hit the right button, was established and voted on a second reading in December 15, 2006. During that time, they gave a 30-year end date. So in December 15, 2036, And believe it or not, that's really not that far away as we look. If we're already at the end or the middle of 2025 or 2024, we start 2025, we're getting close to a decade out of when this TIRZ district sunsets. So the total for the entire area was just over 1,300 acres, and that's broken up into roughly 671 acres is the North Tier Zone and 660 acres as the South Tier Zone. It is all one area, and it just kind of has those two zones there. But the ordinance map was adopted that way with the two areas. But as some of y'all have heard in the past, that it is really one tier zone, and they just allocate money out to the north and south. So as we move forward, we're going to continue to do some discussion points at each board meeting. We're starting to do this with each one of our boards in planning, so Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Adjustment, Design and Historic Review Commission, as well as the TIRZ Board, of just doing some general education to the board as well as the public about things that are going in, goes on with the board. And so we hope over the next month or so, we're going to bring back some of the information about some of the downtown revitalization and how that has been impacted from TIRZ over the last, 15 years or so. And then the Chadburn Corridor, how that is really impacting different businesses along the Chadburn Corridor. The significance of public projects and private projects, how are those really significantly related? And then how do our nonprofits fit in this formula? As you guys know, on our South Tiers district, there's a prohibition that nonprofits cannot apply. On our North Tiers districts, we do allow nonprofits to apply. You guys have the ability to make your recommendation, and then that goes to City Council for final approval for fund expenditure. There has been discussion this last year of do we have a pot that is just for nonprofits? Do we come up with a formula that they have some, as they say, skin in the game of some percentage of whatever they're requesting? We have not finalized that, but even with the citizens, with Evelyn's comments today, it's clear that there are some in the north that are interested in trying to figure out what does the TIRZ Board want to do. Our policies currently allow it, and so I think I'm going to bring back the next time maybe some suggestions about what we could do within that north zone, and if we wanted to separate out a pot, or if we want to say our policy is good and let's move forward again and accept applications, and then we go through the process to review the application and then move that to this board for approval. If they approve here, then we move it to City Council with that recommendation. So I know I just wanted to keep it kind of brief, very, very basic, but that's kind of where we're headed with some of the ideas. I didn't want to take up too much time giving a lot of things that's coming, but we are doing our research. I know Hannah's got a little bit of update on some projects and things, so I'm going to let her kind of do the projects. But before I sit down, are there any other items that the board would like to say, well, why do we do it this way or why do we do it that way, that I could start researching? And it may not get back to you until the fall, until September or so, but I want to continue to not only educate myself, educate our public, and then help you guys with any questions that you have.
Could you touch just on where the money is from?
Well, the money is from the tax difference between the property taxes. Basically, when it got frozen in 2006, there's that increment difference of whatever that value is raised. That increment difference gets set aside. That goes into the pot back to the projects that we are approving. So that's where the increment difference comes in. When it sunsets, then the city will retain all of that property tax into their general fund as normal property tax. But they've said in this zone, they're taking that out, setting it aside for projects, private and public.
And you might want to detail what the percentage is, because it's just a tiny bit of the.
It is, and
or maybe we can save that for Tina.
I might save that for Tina because I don't know that off the top of my head, and I don't want to misspeak on what that percentage is.
Yeah, I know it's a very small percentage.
It is a small percentage. But I can certainly research that and get that back to us to make sure everybody understands what that percentage is.
In other words, not all of that increment change is coming to us. It's just a small percentage of it.
A small percentage, yes. Because if you look at 1,300 acres, that's a lot of properties to be taxed. And so that's how those, and then as property valuations go up, that tax goes up, and so that increment gets just a little bit more chunk of the change to put back into projects. And that's kind of the goal, is to revitalize that area, use those dollars to keep that area continuing to improve.
Yeah.
Shirley, did you have something you want to ask
I
about?
did, but I've forgotten, you know. I should have written it down. I was writing down what you were saying. I should have written my question down.
All right. Well, if you think about it.
Yes, ma'am.
It just came back.
All right.
Okay, so are we going to be able to get some additional information from you at the next meeting about what has been discussed? I know this nonprofit issue continues to come up. So what are we anticipating at the next meeting?
Well, what I'm going to do is, obviously, we haven't given a lot of dollars or approved a lot of nonprofit projects. What I'm going to do is look at what has been given, particularly on the north side, since that's where we're allowed to do nonprofits. What do we have available? And if we did a percentage of the annual project, say we do 5 annual projects that are worth $700,000, if we did a percentage of that set aside for nonprofits, what would that dollar amount be? Now, I think they're eligible for the full $75,000 under our current policy. We have seen that, I believe the last one that went forward did not get approved at City Council. And so the question for this group would be, do we modify our policy to see if there's something they might like, or do we keep going with, okay, they're eligible for the $75,000, they're going to put in their 25% if they need to, and then go to City Council? Because it does ultimately go back to City Council for their final decision. Our current policies do allow it.
Okay, and so do we have the opportunity to maybe visit with the council, to really understand what their thinking is? When you provided, I believe it was you that provided the policy, it clearly says, that they're eligible if they meet the other criteria. Yet every time we approve one, it never gets passed. And I think that was a discussion we had a couple of months ago, that what we really needed to understand, and we understand they're the mayor and the council, we get that.
Yes, ma'am.
But what is the point of us constantly encouraging organizations to apply? We think it's a great idea, we approve it, and then it's never approved. I think I had asked how many nonprofits have we approved over the recent years, and I don't believe I've gotten that information unless I've overlooked it. So my question is that something that we need to have a separate discussion about? Because it seems that the criteria is there. Mm-hmm. We're doing what we're needing to do, but at the discretion of the council, they're making a decision over and beyond what we say, even some of those that we don't approve, that they turn around and approve. So how do we handle that, Mr. Van Allen?
Matt, can I address that? Sure. During the last time we had this issue, and I went before City Council to propose, in support of the recommendation that came from this related to that specific request. One of the things that came out of that discussion that I gleaned, and I've had conversations with Aaron about it, is concerns with some of the council members that there needs to be some kind of limit on how much of the funds would be available for nonprofits. What their concern is if they award it to one nonprofit, then all the nonprofits on the north side are going to be coming and all the money is going to be going for nonprofits as opposed to private business. I told them I disagreed with that, but that's one of the concerns. I can't speak for every council member, but from my experience and the conversations that I had at the council and with other council members since, that was one of the concerns. And so I began talking with Aaron about is there some sort of proposal we could come up with that might alleviate that concern, which could be either a fixed amount or a percentage of how much money is available in the north be dedicated towards nonprofits so that there's a cap at some point that it doesn't go beyond. So that was just a proposal that's been out there.
Yeah, I was in that meeting,
Yeah.
and I recall the council persons that had comment on that. So I guess maybe this is a question that can't even be answered. Okay, did you want to go ahead and speak to that?
No, I was just
before?
going to say, Shirley, one thing that I would encourage you to do that you brought up is that most of you are appointed by a council member. So yes, specifically visit with your council member and find out what it is that they're looking for. And I think John Mark nailed most of it, but I would encourage you to talk to your council member and confirm that's something that they would consider ahead of time. So yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions on this right now? And I believe the plan is not, this is not necessarily the end of the education process, but we'll be
No.
continuing to have topics come up like this, and we'll be having discussions so we can ask questions.
Yes, that is correct. We want to keep the conversation going. And even with the nonprofit item, I want to make sure I have the right data in front of you so that I have that. And I simply just haven't had a lot of time to get to it quite yet, but we are working on getting to it as I work through all the planning items that I need to get to. But this is on my radar, and so we do want to continue to work towards getting an answer that is palatable so that those parts of our community can continue to move forward too.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to item number 5. Ms. Muriel, board active project update, which I thought this was a good idea when they brought this to me.
Yes. Good afternoon, Hannah Morell, Development Services Office Coordinator. Like you mentioned, this is a good idea, mostly because I'm new to this, and so it was very interesting to see everything that you guys have passed through here. It has taken a while, and I mean, there's probably some that I've missed, but as of right now, here's what I've been looking at, and these are the ones that the deadline is coming up in the next year or two. And so we'll start with 416 South Oaks, which was the Concho Christmas. Their deadline looks like it's going to be in 2024, this year of November. And yeah, this was really just me kind of wanting to go through everything. And I'm going to follow up with some of the applicants throughout the couple of weeks just to see what's going on. But the next one we have is 231 and 215 South Chadburn. They are approaching a 2025 deadline in February. And then 2026 North Chadburn, which is the Donutopia. They are also in February 2025. And let's see. I think I missed one on here. 2600 MLK, which is the Matador Instrumental. They're in the north. And they are also approaching a February 2025 deadline. And 1000 North Chadburn is the Constancio Tire, which is also in the north, and they are approaching a February 2025 deadline as well. And like I mentioned, I'll follow up with these applicants just to kind of see the progress of what they're looking at, maybe see if they need an extension, see if they might want to bring one forward, excuse me. And yeah, that's just what I've
Do you
found so
have
far.
any slides that can show us what those projects are, or is that not part of it?
I do not right
Okay.
now, but I can definitely track those down and get you to it, especially
Just-
after I've talked to
Just to kind
them.
of educate everyone and let them know what's actually, what the projects are. I know you told us what they
Mm-hmm.
are, but I think it might could help.
Of course, and yeah, I'll definitely maybe put that on the agenda for next time, just so you guys can see what's going on, especially after I've talked to them and maybe see what progress they've made, if any, and that might help a lot too.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Next, we have the, sorry, you go.
No, go ahead. Next item is number 6, consideration of possible action on North TIRZ project.
Getting ahead of myself, sorry. We just have 1901 North Chadburn, which is right now a Cody's, but they are going to make it into an entertainment type of center. They're requesting $7,750, and it's just for their asbestos abatement.
Is the applicant here?
I do not believe so.
You believe so?
I do not believe
You do
so.
not believe so, okay. And who is the applicant?
Eunice Herrera,
Okay, and it's going to be what sort of business?
an entertainment style, how would you explain it? Yeah, an entertainment venue.
What the building permit in the application said was it's more of a gaming entertainment. We're not exactly sure what the gaming entertainment is, but they're having to move some walls and I think maybe widen a doorway for egress. And that's what the asbestos abatement is coming into, that they have to remove that wall, and that includes asbestos abatement.
Just to make a joke, going way back, it's not 8-liners, is it? I mean, never mind, I shouldn't have said that.
Not that I'm aware
I
of.
just couldn't resist. Any questions from any of the board on this one?
Are we going to see the full amount of the project, Hannah? Is that coming up? Am I moving too fast?
I don't believe so. I believe when it's, I would hope so, but I believe only when it's an asbestos, they might just end there.
Okay, so the 7750, is that 100% of the asbestos abatement, or are they providing some portion of that? That's my question.
Oh, sorry about that. No, ma'am, since it's below 10,000 and they're in the north.
Okay, the 10,000 rule, okay.
The asbestos abatement is not gonna add anything to the tax rolls, but they've done a good job with that building. How much is, refresh my memory, how much does the total project cost? I forgot.
Total of
I think the total project cost is the
Is the seven, yes.
7,750, because it's just for the asbestos abatement.
Yes.
How much does the project cost? Requesting is 70, they requested 7,700 from us.
Yes.
Yes.
But I believe that's the total cost of the asbestos abatement. Because it's under $10,000 and it's in the north, they don't have to have a match.
They're not willing to put up any match.
Apparently not. It's not a requirement under our guidelines.
Huh?
It's not a requirement under our guidelines.
I know it's not.
Okay.
They have done some other work on the building. They did not provide costs for that, but they have done some other work on the building to make it usable again. Not that it wasn't in bad shape, but they've done some other costs.
Did they receive a grant for anything previous from us?
I don't recall
I
this
don't
one
recall
coming up.
that.
I don't recall it either, but in the 3 years I've been here.
I know the streetscape was part of a project that was done by the city, I'm gonna say 15 or so years ago, maybe that's not too far, that kind of through that area with those pavers and the lights. I guess it was Cody's Used Cars, but they're gonna have a nice big parking lot. It's on a critical corner, and so part of it is keeping some occupancy in a vacant building. Hopefully, the asbestos abatement helps them get moving forward, as well as maybe if they don't end up being the occupant, it's occupiable for somebody else.
Motion's been made to approve the request. Is there a second? I'll second. Mr. Newland seconds. First, is there any public comment on this application? All right, any other discussion from the board? Questions?
I just have a question. We normally would get these in advance to be able to review them, but we didn't get anything on this.
The PowerPoint?
Well, anything. We didn't get any documentation about the total project or anything.
Yeah, in the past, we used to, with the email, we used to get
And the
copies
email would
of the
include on
information
projects, we
on
would
what
get
the
stuff on
project
them
was.
to be able to review them in advance before we got here, so we prepared to.
We can make sure we get that in the
Yeah, I don't know
board
why
packet
that-
to go out. We'll
as
make
part of
sure
our
we
board
get that.
packets. And
Yep.
Yes, sir, we'll get that in
I
there.
noticed, and I wasn't able to, I didn't notice it for the May meeting that got delayed till June 4th. I didn't notice we didn't have those, they weren't in there either.
Okay.
The PowerPoint. Okay.
We'll make
point.
sure we get those in there.
Okay.
We can do that.
Any other questions or discussion from the board? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Patrick,
Here comes the concrete man.
well, apparently it's the Patrick Freerick presentation, not the city of San
It's
Angelo.
all about me,
It's
right?
all about you.
It is not all about me. It's about making everything better,
And
all
this-
the way around town.
And
So,
this, just a prelude for anyone that wasn't here last time, Patrick was at the last meeting and brought forth a presentation on the TxDOT grant that the city has been granted and our participation in that. So we asked him to come back with a more specific presentation, but you might want to just give us the Reader's Digest condensed version,
Absolutely can.
if anybody knows what Reader's Digest is anymore. But it's for the board to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Right. So in the city of San Angelo submitted an application to TxDOT under their Transportation Alternative Set Aside grant program for a project that it's a community-wide sidewalk and connectivity project. The TASA grant itself is limited to pedestrian movements, bicycle movements, and the engineering that's related to that infrastructure. So cannot be used for vehicular improvements or anything like that. So what we did is we put together a full-scale project that loops a pedestrian sidewalk all the way from, it goes down Beauregard from Cohen High, or from Abe Street all the way to Oaks. And then it catches Chadburn Street from Washington, skips over the new development that we just got through doing with the revitalization downtown, picks up at Beauregard all the way to 29th Street along Chadburn Street, comes down 29th, catches Edmond, Glenna, all the way around to the loop again, over the top of the loop, down to Arden Road, down Arden, down Avenue N to Johnson, and then Johnson over to Knickerbocker. So you can kind of see it's 11.7 miles of sidewalk and another, I believe it's 7 miles of shared use path on top of that. So TxDOT awarded us $18.7 million to construct this sidewalk. We're required to match 20% of that, so it's a $23 million overall improvement to the walkable and pedestrian infrastructure in San Angelo. Connects numerous amenities around town, both the medical district, shopping, retail, commercial, neighborhoods, schools, parks, all in one major project. So this is a project that without this opportunity, I feel like we probably never would get there, especially as comprehensively as we're going to be able to do with this. So I approached the board at the last meeting, pitching this project and asking for your consideration of providing matching funds within the TIRZ district for that. I think all of you were amenable to that, and y'all asked for a couple things to bring back today. One of those being, what is the distribution between the north zone and the south zone? And then the other is kind of what are some financing options that y'all can take a look at and discuss. So that's what I'm here today to bring to you guys. So let's go over this real quick again, that distribution. If we look at the north side, so north side's pretty simple because it's all along the Chadburn Street corridor, right? From 5th Street all the way up to 29th Street, down 29th Street to Golf Course Road. What you're looking at is about $6.8 million in total improvements along that corridor. The project matching part for North Chadburn to 29th Street is at 1.32, plus some engineering costs for a total of 1.5, and then, or 4.5. And then the Chadburn S-curve, it's already designed, so I just need matching funds for the pedestrian elements that's included in that design. From the construction aspect, for another $51,000. So the total north matching portion would be 1.503. Again, the total requested down there, you can see in the blue, is 3.403 million, and that's the combined request for both the north and the south TIRZ areas. Looking at the south, kind of following the same mindset, Beauregard from Abe Street all the way to Oaks is a total of $2.9 million in improvements, 20% 580 plus 58, 638. Chadburn Phase B, which is from Beauregard to 5th Street, that's already designed, so there's no engineering costs associated with that. We're just looking at just over $1 million match for the construction aspect of it. And then South Chadburn from the river to Washington is a $1.1 million improvement at $220,000 and $22,000 for $242,000. Total south ask is $1,899,793. So what we did as staff is we sat down and we put together you're going to see 4 options today, but please know that these are options that kind of made logical sense from our perspective, but they are simply they can be either approved as you want to, or the kickoff for a talking points for you guys. So I'll walk through each of these, and then I have a final slide kind of summarizing all 4 so we can look at them big picture. The first 2 slides that you're going to see is a 3-year option. So in talking with finance, what we can do is we can do a reimbursement resolution through the general fund. Basically, y'all designate a certain amount of time and a certain dollar designation for that amount of time. back to the general fund to reimburse us. The general fund will carry that as a receivable and work that down and carry it and use that as the expense for the project. So with a 3-year designation, this first slide, we call it a 3-year flexed, which basically means the word flexed is what I called the north side and the south side each have their own dollar amount designation. Just basically took the dollar amount that you needed for each side, divided it by 3, and there's your total contribution and what you would need annually. So for the north side, that's a $502,000 allocation for 3 years, total 1.506. South side, $633,000 for 3 years, 1.899. If you'll note that asterisk down there at the bottom, I also put in kind of what the term of that would be. So the first payment would be August of 2026 in this scenario, and then that final payment would be August of 2028. I use the month August simply to kind of cue in on what's important to you guys, and that's that interest income. So it lets that money sit in the bank for as long as possible, lets us draw that out in August, still meets our budgetary requirements as far as earning the revenue, but lets it sit in your guys' account for as long as possible to earn as much, to maximize that interest revenue as I can. That was my thinking behind that. Hopefully it's sound and you can follow that. The second option 2 for a 3-year equal. So what this does is it basically makes the contribution amounts equal from the north and the south fund. Being that the south fund obviously needs a little bit more of a matching, we're going to have a year 4 drag up to finish that out. So $501,325 is the annual contribution for both sides for the total of 3 years. Year 4 will see an additional $395,050 out of the south tier again. That will end for the north in August of 2028 and out of the south August of 2029. Same concept on the next 2 slides, just pushed out to a 5-year term. So you're looking at about a $200,000 difference between the two, just for reference. The 5-year flexed, 301 out of the north, 380 out of the south for a flat 5-year term, and you can see what the total contributions then would be there. I'm trying to stay within that 3.403 that we have as a 20%, trying to make the numbers even so that as staff we can track it very, very easily. I think the last time we had an allocation, it was based on a percentage. It was very difficult to track, very difficult to budget for, and very difficult to allocate. I like these nice round numbers better. They make sense in my head, but we can absolutely flex that if you guys are so inclined. 5-year equal, again, making those 2 annual contribution amounts equal to $301,000 with the final payment on year 6 out of the south of $393,000. You'll notice that on the equals, since it is a drag-up payment, it's equivalent to the 3403 that we have expected for that 20% match. So again, that's kind of the 4 options that we put together. We didn't want to overburden a total number of options. I think this gives a good basis for conversation and or decision-making on y'all's part. I appreciate any feedback, any comments, and the consideration in general from you guys.
Okay. Before we get to board questions and comments, I just want to know if there's anyone here in the public that wants to comment on this topic before we dig too deep into it. Yes, sir.
Jamal Shumpert, single member district number 3. I would say I'm in favor of this if you don't take from the north to give to the south. But beyond that, the reason why I'm in favor of this is because it will make the town look a lot more alive. I don't ever see people walking on sidewalks. And in your business in the north, a lot of them don't have sidewalks. So I think it kind of makes a lot of good sense to take it out right now so that you can advertise those businesses when they do get those sidewalks. Outside of that, it's like you said, you probably won't ever get another chance with this $23 million project. Beyond that, I think it'll be a chance for you to redefine yourself in the north side because everybody knows you do a lot of work in the south. but in the north, they don't think you do a lot. And I see you try. It's not like people don't try. It's just that it doesn't show. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. And just to kind of clarify, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, but the proposals that we have here is not taking money from the north towards the south.
It is not.
And
Those,
so that's how these are constructed. Even if we use the same payments, because of the difference that needs to go to the south, there's extra money, extra payment out of the south to compensate for that.
that is correct, to accommodate for that additional improvement dollar.
Okay.
You're going to officially pretty well deplete the south over in the next 3 to 4 years. If we got $200,000 left in the bank right now, according to what you just told us, we got, and we commit in 26.
You're talking about the,
26
you're talking about the south?
Huh?
Talking about the south or the
Yeah.
north? Okay.
South.
And that's the methodology behind the 3 and the 5 number. It wasn't just something we pulled out of the air. The 3-year number is what TxDOT expects us for the duration of time that it's going to take to start construction on these projects. Year 5 is kind of what we expect to be complete with the project. So whether you want the full allocation contributed at the beginning of construction or at the end of construction, that's the methodology behind the 3 and the 5.
This is all one city, and I go back to one, we're just one community, we're not in the north and the south. And the south has less money and will have less money in the next 3 years, or 4 years, or 5, whichever plan they do. What's wrong with the north playing up the largest share of this thing? We don't get the big buck requests from the north. We get the little mom and pops.
Right. And and that's
I
the
mean,
point of
city
discussion
council-
for the board to,
What's wrong with the 65 or 70% from the north and the rest of it coming from the south? And that would equalize the funds. You still have over $1 million left in the north fund at the end of 4 years with the way things are going.
right. And we can absolutely do that if that's the board's desire.
That is certainly something that is within the discretion of this board to propose and for city council to approve. I don't know I think it's a supermajority.
It is a supermajority that would have to vote on that and approve that. I do, just looking back at your fund balance sheet, this year we had 1.2 million in tax revenues for the south. And so that's new money. Now, our estimate would be that should stay that level or more in the coming years. And so if you're giving, depending on which option, if you did the 3-year plus a final year, you're doing $500,000 a year, and then a little less on that year 4. So you should still have $500,000 for projects if you did the 3 plus 1. If you did the 5-year plus 1, then you're going to have 200,000 more than that. Now this year we did have, right now we've had I think 12 applications. We had 9 last time and 3 the first time in the south. We've given away not quite 600,000 in the south this year and still have 246,000 left.
It would probably be broke by October 1.
Well, especially if we open it up for more grant applications.
Correct. If we open up the
opened it
south for another cycle.
We opened it up for a second cycle. And I asked that, when we were discussing these topics, I think the way the staff has approached it is good, because that's the approach that we've taken with the tiers consistently over the years, is keeping the north and the south separate. If you want to discuss, or someone wants to discuss doing something different, we're certainly open to that, but I think we would need to ask staff to go back and come back with a more concrete proposal on that, but just so we can crunch the numbers. But anyone
Mr.
else?
Chairman?
Shirley?
Yeah, I have a question. So I'm looking at all of the options, and I'm just going off of what Mr. Venoy just said. So we would not have any funds taken until 2026. Am I clear on that?
That is correct, yes, ma'am.
So the next couple of years, then we would have an opportunity really for both north and south to increase in their funding?
Potentially.
Potentially, yes. Okay, and so I hear the discussion, the idea of maybe just having it all taken from the north. And I would just have to say in those remarks, Steve and Chairman, that I don't think we need to go that route. I think that what staff has done, as you said, Chairman, is they've stayed consistent with trying to split and be fair and maintaining what's available on the north and what's available on the south. And so if we need to have that discussion, I do agree that staff needs to go back and come back with additional information, because for one, I would not agree, as my vote would not be to allow the north to cover the total cost.
Other questions, comments from the board?
And Chairman, if I may, remember in 2026, that will be the end of our current Chadburn Street commitment. So for the south, that's an 162,977, and according to our sheet for the north, that's 859,195. So those numbers should be coming off of our budget sheet at that time, and then depending on options here, these would be taken into consideration at that time.
That would almost be essentially, maybe not, the numbers may not match evenly, but essentially it would be kind of a wash, because we're already contributing money for the Chadburn Street
Is
project.
that 26 is the end, the 26 is the last year we pay on the south?
And to my understanding, the 26th, the end of fiscal year 26 is the
And
end.
so we'd have a double that year.
We would, it looks like there would be
We'd
1 year
have that
overlap
double year, yeah.
there.
I missed last month's meeting, and I apologize, but, so I don't know, I didn't hear all the details of the project other than just your quick overview there. So, did you give a full presentation on the deal last month?
On the entire project, yes, sir.
Okay, so are y'all pretty much in favor of doing the whole project?
Well, what we're not doing the whole project.
Well,
We are contributing money toward the match for the city for the areas that impact the
Well,
north
I
and the
understand
south.
that we're funding 20%, but the reason I ask is if you're already in favor of the project, you're looking at, bottom line is you're looking at on the south, you're talking about for 5 years, roughly 25% of the total revenue, and year 6, a third of our total revenue out of the south to fund this project.
Yes.
Again, I didn't see the presentation, so
Yeah.
I'd have to have a lot more information before I can support that. But if y'all did, then if you're ready to vote on that, then that's your choice. But, and you're talking about a significant chunk out of the north as well, which we have more funds, but 25% of the total revenue out of the south for 5 years and more than that the 6th year, that's a large commitment on this board to take away from the incentives that we have, up until this year that I've been on this board, we have really struggled to fund projects. This is the first year we have not, this is the first year I've been on this board that we have been able to fund all the projects in the south. I really am concerned with that history of tying our hands and not being able to fund the projects. And I'm very happy that we were able to fund everything this year, but that has real concern for me.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I think that you're right, Mr. Gaylor, you were not here last month, and I think maybe if we could have that presentation provided to us, even if it's via email, and this information.
Do you have that information here,
That
Patrick?
he's going over right now for us to look at, so that everyone can see it. It's difficult to imagine,
Yeah.
and you've not seen it before, so.
I think he has it here. He's just
Okay,
pulling it
so
up.
I did keep my supplemental slide, or my slides from last presentation. Hannah was gracious
Well, I'm
enough to
not
keep
asking
them
you to
on
go
there.
through that
so-
for me, just for me today.
But yeah, there's the general rundown. I know my description was very difficult, but you can see the extent of what this project is, all the way around town. And then, let me go the right direction. And then you can see, kind of what we're doing on the north side there from 5th Street over to Golf Course Road. Going to be doing some, full sidewalk, bicycle amenities, and lighting all the way down this corridor as well, and as well as some pedestrian crossing enhancements to get across the road. Same thing there on so this is the Chadburn Phase B improvements, the streetscape improvements that were the extension of Phase A to finish it all the way out to the loop. Then Beauregard from Cohenheim all the way over to Oak Street. We're going to be doing storefront to storefront on the sidewalk portion of this, sidewalk and curb portion of this area. So this sidewalk is in pretty bad shape with root upheaval and whatnot. So we're going to be improving this whole sidewalk from a storefront to storefront perspective. And that's in the south tiers, and then as well as this bottom section from South Chadburn all the way to Washington, or to Highland, which is the extent of the TIRZ limit, but it actually continues all the way down to Avenue L as far as the project's concerned, but the TIRZ portion, caps out at the Highland, at Highland.
Aaron, refresh my memory, what is the annual payment the South's making now for the downtown project?
I believe it's 162,000.
100
Yes, sir, almost.
162?
Yes, sir, 162,000, roughly.
In the north?
And the north is 859,000.
Well, and as I recall, maybe I'm wrong, that some of the funding that was going for the improvements, which are pretty much in the south, was from the north funds. I believe the
Yes,
city
I believe
council
so.
approved that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Plus maintenance.
yes.
So a little over $1 million a year from both funds, is that correct? 162
And-
and 850.
Yes, sir.
And one thing I want to just clarify for myself and for the public too, my understanding is that all of the funding for the matching grant, for the matching funds is not coming out of the TIRZ fund, correct?
No, just for the TIRZ limits.
Just for the areas that the TIRZ
boundaries
would
of the
be.
TIRZ zones,
And that
correct.
And the funding, the match, to total the match that we need for the grant for the entire city is coming, the city's going to be coming up with funds from other.
City's coming up with some. We have a contribution from Shannon for some, and we have a contribution from ASU for some as well.
Okay, I just don't want anybody to get the impression that the entire match for the city would be coming out of the TIRZ fund.
No, sir, only for the improvements within the TIRZ zones.
I have another question, Chairman. What is the estimate expected over the next couple of years on each side? Did you all use that in your calculations in terms of if we're paying, whether we go the 3-year route or the 5-year route, how much we're going to be spending for this project and our percentage from the TIRZ Board? And then how much is anticipated to actually come in? I know you can't be exact because we don't know, about the properties, but what are you expecting to come in?
Just for clarification, are you asking for the dollar amount of the improvements, the value of the improvements?
No, about how much in taxes are you expecting to come in on the north and on the south over the next same period of time? 3 years or 5 years?
If I told you something, Ms. Spears,
Okay.
I'd be false.
Is there a way that
speaking,
can be
so.
estimated in some tool that you have?
I mean, we can see from the improvements that we did downtown with the revitalization, just what, improving that public infrastructure does and promotes improvement and further private investment along there. We saw a number of businesses pop up when we made that investment just on those 3 blocks. So we expect that same mindset to follow suit all the way through this TIRZ zone. So I think I can comfortably say that I do expect the tax impact to increase with this project. And the beauty of this project is, most of the projects that come before you touch one building, they touch another building, they touch another building. This project touches every building along the corridor. It touches every business along the corridor. It touches every property along the corridor. And really for a minimal financial impact. 20% of, $18 million of improvements is pretty solid. I think anyone would take that bet if they were putting their own money into it. So I can confidently say that I do expect the tax valuation to go up with this project, just based on what we saw with the streetscape revitalization that we did downtown.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make an observation. If you did a 5-year plan, I'm just saying if, the north becomes richer each year by $500,000 than what it's doing right now. The south is about $140,000 in the hole from what it's paying now. For the south, that's a better plan, although it's cost more, and I realize that. Are y'all gonna do a CD, CO, certificate of obligation? For your match?
No, sir, we have, well,
You're gonna budget the.
we're going to budget it, yes.
But
I'm
how
not
are you
planning
gonna
on
raise
taking
the
out-
funding?
I'm not planning on taking out debt, so we have some available street money that is in our bond fund that we already allocated
Okay.
to street
So
reconstruction
you've got
projects.
existing revenues that
Carve
will
that
pay
out.
for that?
Yes, sir.
Without any increase whatsoever?
Correct.
In the tax rate or any proposal?
That is correct.
Okay.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Anything-
I'm
well,
just saying,
yeah.
the 5 years is the most expensive to us, but it's the cheapest to the south, and it preserves the south fund. The north fund is gonna get richer than you can imagine.
I mean,
Well-
again, the total contribution is the same, whether it's 3 or 5, it's just what are y'all
know.
comfortable with annually?
I want to hear from the other board members who haven't had a chance to ask a question or make a comment. Mr. Newland, do you have anything?
I have a question, actually, and
Okay,
it goes
go
back to you, not to you, Greg, but to your comment earlier about how the South has struggled, to finance the projects that have come before it every year, and I'm still new to this too, so, or new on my side, so was there suddenly just a big increase in the revenue because of property taxes and the investment that we've made? Is that, I see Ryan shaking his head, I don't expect you two to answer this, I'm thinking somebody over here can, but is it an anomaly that it went up so much this year? Do we expect that to continue? Why have we struggled to fund all the projects in the South in years past, and then all of a sudden this year, there's more money in the South?
Well, I wouldn't expect it to go up dramatically more like it did this year. I mean, we were usually around the 650 to 750,000 allocation for the South as far as monies coming in. This year it jumped up pretty significantly, and that's due to the tax increase. There have been a few new businesses and longer occupancy of those businesses in that area, but property valuations have gone up.
Okay.
And I expect them to go up, but as you know, our state has capped those valuations at a certain point, so I don't expect to see significant jumps unless it's brand-new land that's being built on, and there's just not that much in the South where there is in the North. I think the North has the potential to jump up here in the next few years as the evaluators, the appraisers get out there and evaluate land at a different rate.
Okay, but we don't expect the South's revenue to drop back down.
I would not expect it.
Okay.
I would expect it to maybe stay flat. I don't know that it's going to jump up significant.
Okay.
Anything, Ryan?
I don't know, I keep thinking about that. Just because we have it a line item for maintenance on the current section that we're paying $75,000 a year for, what's the plan on maintenance for this? Is there funds set, is the budget going to go up, or is that going to come back as well?
So part of this design is, I guess to Stephen's request, is we're not going to be dropping any landscaping as part of this project into that north side. This is all pedestrian and pedestrian elements, so lighting, sidewalks, ramps, bicycle connectivity, that kind of stuff. So, if there's a desire for other staff or management or leadership to put those kind of elements in, then we can address that at the time. But as far as this project is concerned, right now our design is focused simply on the pedestrian elements of it.
What kind of material are you going to use for your sidewalk?
I'm going to use fancy concrete.
What?
Fancy concrete.
What kind of fancy concrete? Are you going to use pattern concrete?
We do expect to do something a little bit different.
It's going to look like a piece of gray?
I'm not going to just slap out a bunch of gray. I think an aesthetic appeal to this is a big part of the project. We don't want to just
You ready for a motion?
make it functional.
Well,
I have another
Carlos, you
question,
have anything?
Yeah.
and I also have one also.
Okay.
So, can you go back to the maps from the north and the south for me?
stop me whenever you see which one.
There.
Oh,
Yeah, right there. You got, what is that?
so this is one of the sections. This is the
It's
North
the
Tier
north side.
section.
Okay,
Then we go drop into the South Tier section along North Chadburn, along Beauregard, and then South Chadburn, south of the river.
okay. So we have a longer stretch on the north side than, of course, the south side.
I think I have.
Kirby Park to,
It's a little over 4 miles in total project. I don't know that I have the actual mileage broken down individually between the two sections.
okay.
Yes, and the north tiers is much narrower and longer up Chadburn, and then widens around 29th, and then comes back down Bryant. There's kind of a
Okay.
donut hole in there in the middle, and so it is a much longer linear distance, but the acreage is roughly the same, where the,
How many businesses does this touch on the north side
I do not have that answer.
versus the south side? Okay.
I'd have to go back and count and do a
Okay.
physical count on what that would be. I mean, it's possible,
Okay,
but I don't have that answer for you today.
all righty. That's the only question I had.
I know that we've been, I don't have to sell the project, I understand that, but I know that we've been asked repeatedly by those businesses along the Beauregard corridor, what can I do about my sidewalk? What is can we fix the curbing? And historically, that has always been on the property owner to address and to repair. So if I can holistically take care of that corridor, I know you're going to have a bunch of very, very happy customers with that particular stretch for sure.
Okay, I had one other question, out of curiosity. How did this project even develop? How did the idea of this, I'm calling it beautification, but
So we started very small, actually. So in that TASA grant, there were several categories. There was a small category, a large, and so the small category was for populations that were under 200,000. The large category was populations over 200,000. And then there's a third category that was for planning and design for like transition plans and projects like that. The problem is in that allocation, in that small category of which we would typically qualify and want to compete in, there was only $5 million put into that pot to be spread across the entire state of Texas. There was well over 300,000 set aside in the larger pot. But what that meant is we had to compete against your Austins, your Dallas, your Houstons, your Metroplex, your San Antonios, those large entities that have historically always won and have always gotten the dollars. So we knew we had to come up with a project that could compete with that level of entity. And we looked at this and it just kind of grew and we understood that we could just keep going and we could connect all these different amenities in San Angelo together with this one project, still fall within what we thought was a reasonable amount of money for the grant terms of it. And so that's how we put it together. It grew into what you see today and those amenities that you see there, and really wanted to make sure we had the bicycling and the pedestrian, and we brought lighting into all of that. And it grew by staff sitting down at a table and talking and developing this thing.
okay, well, I'm curious because I know a few years ago we did had several discussions about barriers to fair housing and all of that. So I'm just wondering, there has not been any public input at this point? It's just an idea that has grown from the staff? Because I'm just wondering, how do we know that we need more sidewalks and all that? How do we know that? Where is that coming from?
There was some strategy to where the route went as well. To Mr. Brown's point earlier, we knew that we had to find some money to leverage for the 20 million. So I already had a street project going on Glenna and 29th that had sidewalks and some pedestrian money assigned to that. I already had a project scheduled for Avenue N and for Johnson Street that had pet elements already as part of that project. So I was able to carve out that money and utilize it as my 20% match. So that was a strategy of, we were already doing this thing, but let's go ahead and see if I can get 20 cents on the dollar on the same thing in a project that we were already going to do. That's what kind of drove where this went. But when we really started looking at how it just connected the entire city, that's what made it good. What you're referring to is going to be more aligned with what we currently have going on. We have a comprehensive safety action plan that we're putting together right now that we got a grant fund for. And that, as part of that development of that plan, we have to reach out to the community and get feedback from them. And where do you need sidewalks? Where do you have safety concerns? Where do you need to go? And so we can put that in that plan, so then we can apply for future construction funding to address those areas that are identified as part of that plan. But that's where the community involvement and the community engagement is really going to shine as far as guiding what we do moving forward.
Now, is there going to be that comprehensive safety plan? Is that going to be a part of this overall plan?
Not of this, it will enhance this. Hopefully, hopefully we can build upon what we're already starting here, but this is a separate deal. We're building that plan right now with a consultant. Like I said, we got a grant to build the plan. Step one is the plan. That qualifies you then for construction money through that SS4A program in the future. So it'll be standalone, but hopefully this takes a big chunk out of that, so we can take that construction money and go focus it somewhere else on what the public wishes and desires.
So the public will not actually get to comment on this one?
Not necessarily. We may have some public engagement as we go through the design process. But as far as the layout, the amenities and that are pretty well set by the grant application.
And it's not going to impact any property owners where they're going to lose any of their current property?
There's a
lines.
couple of areas where we would need just a corner clip for right of way to put in a ped ramp or something like that, but we're not taking property away. The biggest entity that it's going to affect is there's a church along Avenue N that I need some right of way from. ASU's already committed to giving me a pedestrian easement along their campus for this, and then the Corps of Engineers, I need to work with them a little bit to get an easement along their property. But as far as a private entity, very, very little impact, if any, to a private entity.
I think I said last month, I think it's a great project. I'm just wondering with some of these things that we're talking about, sidewalks and all of that, if the people in San Angelo, if this community is really into that, if that's something they're going to do. I certainly think it will make things look nice and expand on that, but I'm just curious. I know we've got some bike trails, for instance, bike paths in certain areas of the city. I never seen anybody riding bicycles, so just curious.
And I can say too that federally, anytime we touch a roadway that is more than just a chip seal or more than just a maintenance activity, we have to, by federal requirement, put in those sidewalks and those ADA amenities in that, especially if there's an established path along that. So we're required to do that.
So it goes back to ADA.
So, yes, ma'am.
All right.
Can you put the larger map up real quick? Show us that one with the overall of what all it connects?
Yes, sir.
So, this is something that in essence, just listening to you and Shirley talk, putting this in creates infrastructure within the city through connectivity, but also we're not only laying the groundwork, but we're saving ourselves money in the future as you have to redo some of these roads and are going to have to pay for the sidewalks and all that anyway.
Right, and that's the point. Everything along Johnson Street, everything along Avenue N, everything that yellow or from Glenna all the way around to 29th, I've got to do that anyway. Yeah. I'm just doing it 20 cents on the dollar now.
Yeah.
What's the board's pleasure? We can, if someone wants to make a motion as to what, can you put the proposals back up there?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a suggestion. It may be an emotion. I'll just have to think about it a minute.
Okay.
I'm not for anything that degrades the South, as I think options 1 and 2 would do. Option number 4 has the least impact on the South, and it makes the North significantly richer in the process. It minimizes the impact of our fund allocation from the South. I'm in favor of the I think it's a great project. And it needs to be done, particularly in the rest of the downtown area, which is a mess. And I would make a motion that we approve the project based upon a 5-year equal, because it has a less impact and negative impact on the south than any other plan you have. It's the most expensive for but we can spread it out. And if we grow it, like he said, Aaron says, $1.2 million a year, we're not going to feel any major impact on the south as we would if we do option number 1 or 2. Because if we had a big project come in on the south, we couldn't fund it.
Is it a motion?
That's a motion.
Okay, there's a motion's been made to approve option 4.
With one caveat, we get to see the final plans and we get to make a recommendation on the final plans.
That's not how it works.
It is going to have, that's going to be my motion, provided this board sees the final plans and specifications of the project before it goes to city council and can make a recommendation as to our concurrence or not.
So there's difficulty in that slightly
Yeah.
because those plans won't be ready until year 3 at the very earliest. And the funding allocation will commence before that.
Well, and I would just make a comment, and I'm sure legal can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think, I mean, we can certainly see the plans. I don't have any problem with that. I just don't think we can condition the funding upon our approving of what the plans are.
I didn't say approval, I said I make a recommendation as to the plan.
Well, but you're saying make a recommendation on the actual project plans to this, maybe I'm confused by what you mean.
I just want this board to see the plans before they go for final, when they're finalized.
Mr. Chairman, we have a motion, we don't have a second, and we're into discussion. So point of order, please.
There is no second. So is there a second to Mr. Brown's motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, all right. Is there any public comment on the motion before we have board discussion? All right. So the table is open for discussion on the motion to approve option 4 with the proviso that the TIRZ Board be able to review the plans before they're approved or before sent to City Council. And I'm not really sure if there's any more clarity that could be provided to that. I guess, and I'll just speak for myself on that, if what we're asking is that we see the plans, and I don't know if we're talking about the final plans of the project before it begins development, when do we want to see these, when does it actually go to City Council? I think the only thing that goes to City Council from us is the recommendation that we recommend doing the option 4 5-year equal, at least that's the motion that's on the floor right now. The only recommendation that I understand that would actually go from that is our recommendation that the City Council do it and approve option 4.
Right, so technically, with the plans, the only thing that wouldn't have to go to City Council is the award of the bid whenever it's bid. That would be the only part of the plans that would have to go to City Council for approval. I have no problem bringing you an update and kind of showing you what you're getting for your money on that, just as an informal. I would like to not tie it necessarily to this, but I think it's good to come back and show you guys what you're getting for your money.
Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, my motion is a 5-year equal plan.
Yes.
5-year equal.
That's option 4.
And we get to review as it's in progress, not try to approve it. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so just to clarify, the motion is to approve the 5-year equal option 4 plan and recommend that to City Council with the request that when the plans are available, that we get a presentation on those plans.
That's correct.
Is that what you want? Okay. All right. My only concern, and I don't necessarily oppose that motion. My concern about it is, just as you said, it's more expensive to us and to the city that way. I don't know how that will work out with the other funding for the project. I am not, just in my personal opinion, I'm not as concerned about the funding with the south zone. I mean, I think what I've observed my time on the board is, and we have had a lot of years where we've been trying to make sure we have the funds to fund projects coming from the south. This year we had projects come in, we approved all the projects, there were funds left over, and because there were funds left over, we opened it up a second time. You know, we could even open it up a third time, I suppose, if we wanted to this year. So I'm not as concerned about that. My view is that the development of the infrastructure in the south zone is an investment that we need to make, and I think the benefit to the city and all those businesses that we have already funded there, I think it outweighs the risk of whether you have an issue that comes up in the future. I mean, we're all talking about projections. We don't really know how it's going to be in the future. So that's my comment on that. But if the 5-year is what the board wants to do, that's just kind of my thought.
I don't know if it helps ease some concern or not, but through negotiations with TxDOT, we do have this project split into 2 different phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is actually going to be Chadburn Phase B, so it's going to be able to kick off as soon as I get the AFAs executed within the next month or 2. So I plan on bidding Chadburn Phase B revitalization, hopefully in December, January of this coming December, January, and get started on it in that February sense. So that part of the revitalization should be completed much, much quicker and start getting that increase in that tax revenue coming into the south a little bit quicker than the 3-year time frame that the rest of the project is going to take out. So,
And Patrick, that's already been designed?
it's already been designed, it's ready to
move
bid.
forward.
All I'm waiting for is paperwork from TxDOT. And
Who's the engineer on the project?
on that project was Centurion Planning and Design.
Are there other questions or comments about the proposal, about the motion on the floor?
Yeah, so I want to make sure I'm clear. Did we need to, first of all, approve the project and then approve these, grant all of these options, or are we doing it all one inclusive of everything? I thought we needed to approve the project because we didn't do that last meeting.
We don't necessarily approve the project as such. I guess we're approving the request for the funding for the project. That's
Correct.
typically
So it's
how
just
we
for the
do it.
funding?
This is a request for funding.
It would
The
be,
motion is we approve the project on a 5-year equal basis, and that is a recommendation that will be sent to the city council. They'll make the final decision.
Correct.
but it would be like a private business comes to you with their project. We don't have veto control over the project itself. We just determine whether we're going to approve the application and the funding. So it's similar to that. Any other questions or comments on the motion? All right, then we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Aye. All right, and the motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, Director's Report. Do we have anything, Mr. Benoit?
Nothing further than what we've already discussed through the earlier presentations. Thank you, Greg, for mentioning that we do need to make sure that we get that information in your packets. We'll make sure we're getting that to you so that you have that background information when you're looking at projects. We're happy to do that. With that, we don't have anything else. We do anticipate meeting in July. So we do anticipate having a meeting because I want to continue some of the education, some of the questions. At that point, I'll also see if, and I know Patrick has it, but he can share a couple of slides of what that design for Phase B was already approved as, so that y'all see what that Phase B for that section from Beauregard going north on Chadburn there. So we'll show that as well. And I'll get some more answers to some of the questions that you posed, Chairperson or Excuse me, Miss Spears, sorry. Yeah. But I will get some of those answers for you, because I know those are pressing questions that we need to get answered for this board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then for next future agenda items, I do think it's appropriate, if you're ready, to have the discussion again on the nonprofits next time. And let's bring some proposals on policy changes that we could propose to the city council related to that. In particular, addressing the one issue I know that's of concern to some council members is having a cap on how much we could award for nonprofits.
And then we also talked about Tina coming.
Yes, yeah, whenever, if she can come for the next meeting, or at least let's get something on the schedule so you can tell us when she'll be coming. Anything else?
We'll get that on the next schedule, and we'll probably have a few more updates on some other projects that, if they've expired, and if we need to take further action to get some of those dollars to come allocated back into monies that can be reallocated back out.
All right. Nothing else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? You want a second to adjourn, right? Okay, second from Mr. Gaylor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.